Here we are, again, going down the spiral of censoring speech. But for this time, it's for one of society's most brilliant and prolific thinkers, Dr. Jordan Peterson. Dr. Jordan Peterson is in the hot seat and being investigated by Ontario's College of Psychologists for comments that he made on social media regarding climate change, COVID-19 policies, and for retweeting another Conservative Party leader's comments. So these are the complaints given to Dr. Peterson by the college as it considers revoking his license, solely based on his social media commentary. Before I get into the particulars of this case, let me introduce myself. My name is Miriam Greenwich. This is the Legal Code, and on this channel we discuss a wide range of legal topics, whether that's legal pitfalls to avoid for your small business, the importance of estate planning for you and your family in order to continue generational wealth, as well as things going on in the news that you should be aware of, like recent changes to Airbnb laws. If you're an Airbnb host and this may impact your business and the way you operate, we discuss it here. And occasionally we do touch on celebrity shenanigans, but only in so much that you can learn something from their mishaps. I don't care about pop culture. I'm not interested in. I'm only interested in the nuggets that you can take and apply to your life to enrich your life and to avoid mistakes that they sometimes make. So if you like that sort of thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share with anyone else you think will find value. Also, I am a real life attorney, so if you would like the opportunity to speak with an attorney to troubleshoot some areas that you may be struggling with, whether that's for your small business, whether you have agita about estate planning, you don't know when is the right time, we could troubleshoot and develop a strategy for you. And there's also a link for that in the description box. Now, without further ado, let's discuss Dr. Jordan Peterson. So who is Dr. Jordan Peterson? He is a Canadian psychologist, author, media commentator, and he began to receive widespread attention in the late 2010s for his views on cultural and political issues. Often described as a conservative. I would not say he's a conservative per se. He's more like tell it like it is. He's not interested in beating around the bush. He's not interested in political correctness. He's interested in being appropriate. He's interested in being thoughtful, being well researched whenever he has an opinion about something. He is well read on it. I think I've heard that he reads about 1,000 books on a topic before he formulates opinion about that topic and then goes in an interview or on a podcast to discuss it. So he's very intentional. He's thoughtful. He tells it straight and narrow, no fluff. He's not offensive. He's not bigoted. He's not a fascist like some people like to say, like the left may say that he is. Not at all. He's actually extremely compassionate. He's extremely aware of human suffering and the complexities of being a human. Even in his interviews, he cries when people say to him, you know, you've helped me so much. I couldn't get out of bed.
Isolated and lonely pubescent girls who have no one to love them enough to help them appreciate who they are.
I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice. Really? If you're in pain, love and truth, that's what you got. And you know, then I do for one overprivileged and unfortunately confused narcissistic Hollywood star.
It's making you emotional to talk about it.
Well, God, you know. You have no idea how many people that's killing.
We're also seeing if we enjoy it, and I'm happy to be here doing something like this with her. It's a real privilege. It goes back to, you know, having children.
A close reading of 20th century history indicates, as nothing else can.
And he starts to cry. He feels immense appreciation for his work to be able to help people. And he cries in his interviews all the time because he feels that he's able to give people something that they didn't have. and that he's ultimately fulfilled his purpose. So if you haven't seen that point of view from him from the media, I would look into that, because that's often let out from his opponents. They do not like to portray or emphasize that aspect of his personality. They emphasize sound bites, which without context will make anyone seem ludicrous.
No. You know, like, you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
You've connected a lot with a lot of young men, lots of different people, but young men particularly seem to, find something in your message. I'm a young man. I'd like to be improved, please.
Yeah.
I want to stop being a pathetic weasel.
Yeah, that would be good. And clean up your room. I don't know how you can go out and protest the structure of the entire economic system if you can't keep your room organized.
What are the limits of that idea, though? Because you can have a lovely clean room, but if for my generation, we're looking down the barrel of climate change, we can't afford a house, some people can't get work, university education's unaffordable. Like, there are these huge, massive problems in society and the political economy that are also going to, screw us over in the big picture that the clean room isn't going to necessarily fix.
If you're going to fix complicated problems, you have to learn how to fix simple problems first.
I want to know, what is your answer to young people for some of the really big problems facing humanity, like the climate catastrophe, like economic crisis, like the precarious job market? Because I just don't, you talk all this much about individual responsibility. Most of us are never going to be able to afford to have all of these assets to have responsibility over. So what is your advice beyond banal comments like clean your room?
Actually, rather difficult to answer a question that ends with your comments are banal politely. I would consider that more of an opinionated, personal, and political statement than actually.
In 2016, Peterson released a series of YouTube videos criticizing the act in Canada to amend the Canadian Human Rights, I think it's BC 16, passed by Parliament of Canada to introduce gender identity expression as prohibited grounds for discrimination. Peterson argued that the bill would make the use of certain gender pronouns compelled speech, and related this argument to a general critique of political correctness and identity politics. He received significant media coverage, attracting both support and criticism, and this is where the opponent zeroed in on his criticism of gender pronouns, with him refusing to use them as equating to discrimination and violence toward the trans community. He begs to differ, like many people do. Now, Peterson's lectures and conversations, spread mainly through YouTube and podcasts, soon gathered millions of views. By 2018, he had put his whole clinical practice and his teaching duties on hold because of his success, and then he published a second book called The 12 Rules for Life, an antidote of chaos. Now, this went on a world tour. It became a bestseller in several countries. And if you go through the 12 Rules for Life, this is his anecdotes for life. It's rules to live by. Any typical sage advice that sometimes we forget because we're living in the matrix. Number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. That's advice our grandmothers used to tell us. Number 2, treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. Be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Make sure that your friends have your back and they're not praying or anticipating your demise. Number 4, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Do better every single day. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Don't make your children spoiled brats that you can't stand them. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do in your corner of the world, and ultimately that would be a better place. And before you start pointing fingers about what other people should be doing. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Don't do necessarily what makes you feel good, that gives you that dopamine rush. Do what's meaningful, what's enduring, what's long lasting, not quick thrills. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Be as truthful as possible. Assume that the person you're listening to might know something you don't. You can always learn from someone. Be precise in your speech. Do not bother children when they're skateboarding. And the last one, pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Stop and smell the roses. So this is sage advice that he has shared with the world and helped many, many, many people, because sometimes we get lost in our own thoughts and the complexities of the world and managing this and that. And sometimes we need to default to discipline, and that's what this book reminds us. So that was his best-selling book. In 2022, Peterson signed a content distribution deal with conservative media company, The Daily Wire. So now he's a commenter on The Daily Wire. Now, throughout Dr. Peterson's career, he had an illustrious practice, was receiving accolades from different institutions. He was never disciplined, or there were never any formal complaints filed against him for misconduct as a psychologist. In February of 2018, what did come up is that Peterson entered a promise with the college after a professional misconduct complaint was launched against him for his communication and boundaries with his patients. The college did not consider this a full disciplinary hearing, rather, and accepted Peterson into a 3-month undertaking to work on prioritizing his practice and improving his patients' communication. Again, Peterson had no prior disciplinary punishments or restrictions on his clinical practice. However, in 2023, the college ordered Dr. Peterson to undergo social media communication training and coaching following the comments that he made on social media, not as it relates to how he practiced or related to his clients and patients, rather how he expressed his views on social media platforms. Now, the College of Ontario is strictly a regulatory body over psychologists like Dr. Peterson. Its job is to make sure that psychologists practice psychology ethically and professionally. There's a code of conduct that the college enforces to make sure the psychologists are not using their role to take advantage of patients, just like any other regulatory body like the bar exam that deals with a licensing profession. However, in this case, the college is taking another step to broaden their role and scope and censor his speech on social media platforms, and perhaps similarly position psychologists if they deem that what the psychologist is saying is inappropriate and tangential to the views of the college. Again, Dr. Peterson is not being disciplined for his ethics, I have to emphasize it, but for his political views on social media and his speech. And he must undergo this training or face the disciplinary hearing that could see him losing his license. Of course, Dr. Peterson has refused, calling this an attempt to force him to re-educate himself, retrain himself, and instead has launched a court challenge where he will raise constitutional issues regarding the college's move. He was quoted in saying, "We decided that the best way to challenge this would be in court on constitutional grounds. First Amendment, freedom of speech." Peterson said, "I don't trust the process at the college, and no one should." So he says that if he went through the judicial review of the college, that they would ultimately railroad him, and this would just be a public flogging and witch hunt, which he has no chance of winning. And rather, he's relying on the court system to say that their approach is beyond the scope of what they can do. Peterson's legal findings with Ontario Superior Court of Justice said the sections of the college's bylaws, code of conduct, their standards are too broad. They're not specific enough in which to point to where his behavior and standards is out of bounds and tangential to the college. Oh, I didn't even tell you the quotes. So these are what the quotes are that the College of Psychology is hanging their hat on. Cloth masks are ineffective against Omicron. And no, that's Ben Shapiro's quote. So Jordan Peterson tweeted, "Enough already. time to stop the mask, stop the lockdown, stop the petty power mad hysteria, leave people alone and let them get on with their lives. And he quoted Ben Shapiro, who's another conservative commentary on the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro then retweeted, replying to, so he added Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro then retweeted, number one, cloth masks are ineffective against Omicron. And he quoted sources, Liana Wen and CNN. Credible platforms have also said this, and he's quoting that. Number two, the vaccinated can spread and get COVID. Number three, the death rate is comparable to the flu, Chris Hayes. Number four, many people who are entering hospitals with COVID, not with COVID, Fauci. So he quoted his sources, what all of us were told to do whenever we wrote a paper, so we wouldn't be accused of plagiarizing. So these are what the Twitter quotes are. But isn't this what everyone is thinking? Isn't this everyone's sentiment at this point? That enough with the mask already, enough with the mandates. All right, people who are vaccinated are just as likely to get COVID as people who are not vaccinated. Why is this even a big deal? This has all been a debate, a scientific debate the last 3 years. This is not new. And even if you don't agree with the statements that the masks are ineffective or they are effective, let the issue just be polarizing and let the science even out the playing field. Rather than denouncing one perfectly credible scientific position over another. Scientists have been battling this for the last 3 years. So why is it any different that Jordan Peterson says it? Make no mistake about this. The documents the colleges turned over to Peterson for his investigation are highly politicized attempt to shut him down. And even according to Peterson, the complaints aren't even from clients and patients that the psychologist saw. Some claim to be, but they did an investigation. None of them actually came from credible psychologists that he treated. These are simply people who said they don't like his political commentary on YouTube. And so his career is up for grabs for people who just don't like him. And they're using this. They're using the College of Ontario. They're masquerading it as if it's an ethical issue when it's not. The case summary of the investigation also details the complaints of anonymous caller who said that they didn't like what Dr. Peterson said on Joe Rogan's podcast, probably about him saying he only eats beef and water and seltzer water or something like that. So, a person calls up and says they don't like what he eats and what he says, and they say what he says about his diet that works for him, and they say this is harmful and unprofessional, and it's taken as legitimate. So this is where we have gone. That an anonymous caller can make an accusation about a prolific public figure based on disagreeing with that person, what they've said, and that person, the powers that be, are ready to revoke a practitioner's license. Doesn't that leave all of us vulnerable to being disbarred or facing ethical investigations, having our license taken away without any legitimate due process and procedure? Do we really want this? Professional colleges, whether it's like for psychologists, for doctors, for lawyers, for teachers, any profession, accountants who are supposed to ensure, the professional colleges are supposed to ensure professionalism, high standards of work, that members perform their work ethically and professionally. These colleges are not supposed to act as police, forcing, polarizing, or controversial members into re-education sessions just from having differing social and political views that disagree with the college's leadership. Their role is not to police thought among their members. And because a person, a member, disagrees with the college's current leadership, that means that person's career is up for grab, especially with the controversial topics such as COVID-19, the pandemic, transgender. All of these topics invite a certain level of controversy and different opinions. But don't these colleges want a healthy debate? Individual thought was once rewarded, but now people being villainized because their ideology differs. His quote wasn't bigoted speech, but is being treated as such. It's actually a decry from the government to quit the crap, be transparent and responsible, that this is affecting people's lives. This is not even Dr. Peterson's first rodeo with censorship. In 2017, he was censored, suspended on Google and YouTube for not using the correct gender pronouns. That has somehow become equated with a violent act toward or contorted as hate speech. So because this is not his first rodeo, I think he's well prepared for this type of battle of having his license revoked, and all of us should be. I have a lot of similar views to Dr. Jordan. As I was saying before the battery went out, I've had a lot of similar views to Peterson. I agree with a lot of his positions on things about the commentary about the culture. I even have a similar diet to him, and he has informed me in a way, he has helped me and many despondent young men who resonate with his message. And that demonstrates the impact of his message, that he's not just for white men. That's also been touted as his platform, that he's sort of fascist in his points of view. But his message holds true. He talks about humanity. He speaks to all of us about bettering ourselves, improving our lives, family being important, family being the bedrock of a healthy society, and that family, the institution of family, is endangered in the Western world. Things that we all need to focus in on that impact our lives. He's not this fascist, bigoted psychologist that many have said he is. But let me know what you think about this battle with his licensing. Do you think he'll be successful? I think he's prepared for the worst. No matter how it may happen, he will still continue to have an illustrious career, even if he won't be able to see patients privately, which he hasn't done in a few years, and he hasn't been teaching in a few years. He will continue to be able to write. He will continue to be able to spread his message, and he has a lot of support from all different avenues. So many powerful people agree with him. Many people who probably won't put their neck out on the line and say, I agree with what you say, but I'm not going to say it publicly. But he has a lot of support, and he has a lot of personal convictions. So whoever doesn't support or supports him, he knows who he is and what he stands for, and he's unapologetic about that. Strong values and conviction. And when you stand in your truth, they could dangle the carrot and the stick in front of you, and you say, you know what, I know what I believe in, and I know what I stand for, and you're not going to control the way I speak and choose to speak on social media, which is pretty much what he's saying. He's not backing down. He's not backing down. I've been watching his tweets, and he's sort of not mocking the process. I think he's being transparent that he's not backing down, that they're threatening to take away his license. He refuses to do any social media training regarding this, and he is ready to take this to court and see how it plays out on their battlefield. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is the beginning of more encroachments on speech? But the funny thing is about the First Amendment, about freedom of speech, about basic rights, it's usually a protection from the government overstepping and quieting and trying to quench individual thought and individual expression. But here we see the private players acting as governing bodies to silence individual speech, not the government per se. They have now stepped in as government to control how we think, where we go, what we say. What do we think about this? Let me know in the comment section. All comments are welcome. Even if you are an adamant opponent of Dr. Peterson, I want to hear why in the comment section. And I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.